in preparing for, talking about building and sustaining a high school program, just the preparation itself has been an amazing experience for me, because it's forced me to reflect on over 30 years of coaching and all the incredible memories and all the incredible people that I've met, just being involved in the game of basketball. So the difficult part is trying to put this in a neat little package and try and conceptualize some of the things that we've done at St. Francis, and explain why we feel we've been successful. But I've done my best, and I hope that people can find some value in it. Basically, in terms of objectives of what I would like to accomplish, certainly I'm going to be sharing my experience and identifying some of the important elements that I felt and we felt were important to our success, and at the same time identify some pitfalls that come along with building a program that we've experienced or that I've observed in other programs. I have an incredible amount of respect for high school basketball coaches across Ontario and throughout the country. And I hope that by telling our story, that people in the various regions across Ontario and Canada understand that these stories are going on in every region. And the people that I've come in contact with and coaches through OFSA and tournaments, I have the utmost respect for the things that they do for their kids and for basketball and their schools, and they don't always get the recognition they deserve. So we'll be talking a lot about our program today, but to me, it's a celebration of high school basketball in general. If time permitting, I would like to, comment a little bit about keeping high school basketball relevant. Things have changed so dramatically, and we all understand with prep schools and club basketball, and sometimes high school basketball gets relegated to the back pages, and that hurts me as a coach, and I think there's a significant role for high school basketball moving forward. So I'll try and stay on point and on topic so we can get to that. For those of you who aren't familiar with St. Francis is a school in North End, St. Catharines. This was to be our 25th anniversary as a school. And when I arrived at St. Francis, and it's a school, when I got there, just over 500 students, and at its peak was just over 700, currently just over 600. And when I arrived at St. Francis, I had just finished, my most recent experience was at Dennis Morris, both as the head coach of the senior girls team and then the assistant coach with Kevin McKenna. And we had, we'd won SASA championships and 2 consecutive OFSA appearances. And, I was a player there, and an incredible tradition and legacy of basketball excellence. And I was moving now to a school that, was just having grade 11 added to its school at the time, and no basketball program. And I'll circle back to this picture later, but this is the first group of gentlemen that I came across when I went to the gym. And to be perfectly honest, my dream, and I had always imagined myself taking over the Dennis Morris program, and I really wasn't that thrilled to be there. I was a little disappointed that it didn't work out in getting a job at Dennis Morris, and there were some reasons for that. But I remember the first time walking into that gym, and thank you to Jamie for articulating what it's like to start a new program. He talked about knowing yourself and knowing your environment. And I had an idea about who I was as a coach, but I was like a fish out of water in terms of, what I was heading into. And I walked into a barren gym with, some kids who, they did look like they had a little bit of talent, but it was pretty clear that, these guys didn't have, they didn't have any role models. They had no tradition. And, a part of me wanted to sort of maybe head back out the door, but I called them in, and I introduced myself and started talking about, who I was and, some ideas that I had for where we could go. And I remember, it's one of those turning points in my coaching career. So Jason, who's on the right there, and he's gripping the basketball, and he was a kid that was full of life and full of vigor. And he was looking at me so intently and hanging on almost every word. And I could sense that he just had, he believed in what I was saying, and he hardly even knew me. And there was this feeling that came over me of, wow, this is an incredible responsibility that I have, that I'm about to undertake. And my whole outlook on where I was and how I was to approach it changed from that. And I had the opportunity to tell Jason that the other day when he reached out to me. One of the great things about putting this together again was how many kids reached out to wish me luck and thank me for what I had done. So that's the first time I was able to tell him that story. And it was an incredible moment for me. I'm going to work through a series of important things for building our program. None of them are revelations, and it's not what's important, it's how you execute it. So I'm hoping that I can either reinforce some of the things that people are doing, or just give them pause for thought and maybe have them reconsider an approach. I love quotes. Mind candy, patience and fortitude. Without patience and fortitude, I don't make it through the first couple of years of this program, and I move on to something else. Maybe I'm the tennis coach or volleyball coach. And so how do you start a program from scratch? So I went back and what was the most important thing for me through my playing days? What do I remember about my high school coach and my university career, and what were the strengths that I had at Dennis Morris? And I always came back to relationships, and every program begins and ends with relationships. When it's all said and done, I'm in a bit of a transition right now myself, and all that matters is those relationships. And when you're dealing with teenage kids, it's a critical time in their emotional development. And we have such a responsibility, and we have such an opportunity to impact their lives. You've got to, when you're dealing with teenagers, you got to remember, you've got to meet them where they are too. Like I had to take my time in getting to know these kids. I didn't come in guns a-blazing, and treat them like I treated the kids at, in my previous schools, because they knew me. So, and the other thing I realized about teenage kids is, they're going to present themselves to you probably in a way that they feel you would like to see them, or probably more realistically in how their friends would like to see them. So they rarely, reveal much about themselves. And how do I establish an honest relationship with a kid until I get to know them? And how do I get to know them? And that starts with just spending time with them. And, in a basketball setting, that starts in the gym. So, we spend time and we start having conversations, and we develop some trust. And on the flip side, and to add to that point, to start being passionate about things that they're passionate about, so that they start to realize that I am someone that they can trust and support. And if we're going to have an honest relationship, then I have to start revealing to them who I really am. How do I do that? And I tell them stories of things that I've done, and tell them things that I'm afraid of, or hobbies that I have. So they start to see me as more than just a basketball coach. One of the things that I found very useful in that regard was bringing my family around the team and having them around my family with my parents. And both my parents were around at the time, and I was married, and partway through, and when I had kids, I thought that was an incredibly important thing to do, so they could see me as, I was somebody's son, and I was somebody's husband, and I was somebody's father, and I was so much more multidimensional than just a coach. Because for both parties, basketball is just something that we do, and it's separate from who we are. And if we're going to develop a real meaningful relationship, we have to understand that distinction. So pitfalls that I've, for people that I may have observed or, maybe experienced myself is the tendency just to gloss over the relationship and keep a superficial relationship, seeing kids as a means to an end. as opposed to taking the time, because it permeates through your whole program. And the strength of your program in any group, to me, lies in the strength of those relationships. This is actually the third year of my time at St. Francis in coaching, and going back to that first picture, and there was color back then. It just happened to be a yearbook picture. It's not that ancient, but that was the team picture. And where was I? We were in a lockout sit. So the very first year I came to St. Francis, we went, I can't remember, strike or some type of work action where I was not allowed to be with the team, and the season was canceled, and I wasn't even allowed to work out or watch. And you can imagine, for a guy who had just come in and told them how much I was, going to do for them, and I was there for them, the teenage mind just had a difficult time understanding what was happening. And fortunately, that did end, and I was able to, after the season, spend some time with them in the summer. But generally had 1 year with those kids, and a team full of grade 12s that we had a moderately successful year, and we did establish some bonds and some relationships. But in terms of building a program, 1 year certainly wasn't enough time. And ironically, there were none of them left. There were no grade 11s on that team. So I was, basically starting from scratch with these guys. And, they say adversity builds character. And if that's true, this picture, these guys are in the Character Hall of Fame, because we lost, and we lost badly, but we focused on it. Back in that slide to the left, it talked about fortitude. That was all that we could focus on. And we only had two goals. And one was that we weren't going to quit, and we weren't going to be outworked. And we continued to do that. And, we had, some significant losses. And, as, again, being a little bit of a fish out of water, I scheduled us way too difficult. And a couple of the scores, we lost 98-16. We had numerous 40 to 50 point blowouts, and possibly the most humiliating loss was 55-5 in a local tournament. We managed 5 points. Actually, one of our better players was injured. So going in, I figured it was going to be bad, but never that bad. But a turning point, again, for our program and these kids was the next day, and we took it on the chin at school. And I remember being on CAF duty, and the kids were taking it from their classmates, and they were giving me the gears, because I was, one of those guys that could dish it out. And we had practice at 5:30 this evening, and I remember thinking I might be the only guy there tonight. And I showed up, and every single one of these kids showed up. And I called them in, and I said, you know what, fellas, this is the first time that I realized that something magical is going to happen here. And that if we just keep plugging away, and we're patient, and we demonstrate fortitude, that we're going to turn this thing around. And, and we move forward from there. The second thing, and again, the quote, half of knowing what you want is knowing what you're willing to give up, is extremely important, because the second element and the crucial thing for our program was just sacrifice. And as a coach, before you even start, you really have to consider, how much does this really mean to me? And how much am I willing to sacrifice to get there? Because we all want the same things. We all want to win. We all want to be the successful program. But, how much are we willing to give of ourselves to get there? And the same of our kids. And through that sacrifice, we know that we're going to develop skill. And I include confidence in that, because confidence is just a skill based on, sacrifice and repetition. So, I thought it was important for the kids and for myself to recognize that, with every sacrifice comes reward. So for that group and for us, we committed ourselves to year-round development, and in those days there were summer leagues, and we would take the kids and travel over to Niagara Falls, New York, and Sal Constantino, and anyone from our area might know that name, just an incredible coach and person and done so much for the kids in that community. And I had met him through my Dennis Morris days, and he was gracious enough to allow us to play in that league. And, we went over there and took our lumps, but I could sense that the kids were starting to feel more confident about what they were doing. We had summer camps. Our gym does not have air conditioning, and I swear it was 110 degrees if it was 40 degrees. And, we had coaches and our junior coaches out there slugging away trying to raise money for our kids. And, those are the types of things that make a difference for a program. And just a quick story about, just a little thing that turned into a big thing. I had a player, Alex Shaw, and I'm jumping a little bit ahead in the timeline, but he was involved in one of those Ontario basketball development things at York. And he had mentioned he was playing on Saturday morning. And I thought, oh, what a nice idea. Friday night, I'll drive up there. I've got some friends in the area, and I'll drop in and see him on Saturday. So I drove up, and I guess my friends had maybe had a few too many and headed out and forgot that I was coming, and I was locked out and nowhere to stay. And, I'm Irish. It's not like I'm going to go and spring for a hotel, and probably too cheap to drive back home. So I decided I was going to sleep in the parking lot at York. And I'd read in the news there were some incidents that had happened in the area. So I tried to sleep with one eye open and probably slept about 5 minutes before I crawled into York. Fortunately, one of the first people I saw was Alex. Alex, how are you? And how's it going? Looking forward to the game. And he explained there was a change in the schedule, and that he was, he had these conferences that he had to go to, and he was playing at 2 and I had some previous commitments. So I said, Alex, I apologize. I won't be able to get you, but, good luck. And I remember driving home and thinking, well, what an incredible waste of time that was, until I got home that night, and Alex's mom had called, and Alex had called her and just said how much it meant for him for me to come up, and that he was struggling while he was there, and he wasn't having a good time, but just seeing me gave him some confidence, and he said he had a great day. So sacrifice always has a reward, and sometimes it comes later, and a lot of what we do as coaches and teachers we don't see until much later. What are the pitfalls when it comes to sacrifice? For me, it's just, the expression, just talking a big game, to tell kids that you're going to do things and not back it up with commitment, to me is, it's just not something that you can do as a coach. You've got to be open and honest about what you're willing to give to get there. So, if you're going to coach and you're going to strive to be a winning program, you have to recognize that sacrifice is a huge part of it. And the other caution, and I've struggled with this myself, is that you better make sure you find a balance, and that there are some sacrifices that are simply too big. And if you're sacrificing your health and you're sacrificing too much time away from family and relationships outside of basketball, you really have to have, give pause, and you have to have people around you that can, remind you, that this is important, but there are other, there are things that are as important. So just a word of caution. And I know it's something that I've struggled with myself. This was an incredible moment for us. The 55-5 group, the 98-16, that very next season, I think we finished 5th, and we were, building on the relationships and strengthening those bonds, and we knew what we had put in work, and, we went on this sort of magical playoff run, beat the 4th place team, and then we knocked off the 1st place team in the semifinal, and find ourselves in the city final against the 2nd place team who had just beaten us by 20 points in their gym. We're back in their gym, and it just all came together at the right time. And at a time when they should have been celebrating themselves and their work, they were thinking about me, and I had lost my father in November. They knew how much that had affected me, and I probably have never been more happy for a group of guys, and the team ends up going to OFSA from where we were. So, we were making some progress, and it was just built on hard work and relationships at this point. I think that's a great quote about values, and I want to talk about values now, and some people might question why values is not at the base of the program. And I think values are incredibly important, but I don't think they have the impact if they're not rooted in sacrifice and relationships. Because if we don't care about each other and we don't care about what we're doing, it's hard enough to practice values and to reach those standards that you set for yourself. And if you do care, but if you don't care, they just become a little bit meaningless. And I find that people treat culture like it's some kind of magical pixie dust or some spiritual entity that surrounds your programs. But what it really is, what culture and values are just the daily behaviors that everyone involved in the program does. And it's we're just striving for, these are ideals, and for the most part with high school kids we fall short, and as coaches we fall short. But the battle is the continual struggle to get there. And they're only as valuable as the strength of the relationships. It's important for starting a program because they are things that you can achieve without winning. You only find out, how committed you are to your values through adversity. So, I used to have a lot of people in the school and friends ask me, "How's the team? How are you guys going to do this year?" And I would always say, "I don't know. I have no idea." I said, "What do you mean? Like, you've been, playing this game and coaching this game. How can you, not know how you're going to do?" I said, "Well, I know we have some talent, but we haven't faced any adversity. I don't know how committed we are to the types of things and standards that we're going to need to do, we're going to need to get to." So, in relation to values and culture, as far as kids, people talk about how kids are different. And I disagree. And the only thing that's different is our expectations of them. And one of the things that we wanted to focus on was just having extremely high expectations. But as a high school coach, you also have to consider that kids are going to fall short of those values, and they're going to make mistakes, and sometimes they're going to make big mistakes. And values and culture is about what you're willing to accept, and these are the difficult decisions that coaches understand that we have to make. And what are we willing to accept? And probably just as important, like, why would we be willing to accept something? So if we're willing to accept a behavior or not meeting a standard because the kid is our best rebounder or he's our best player or shooter, and we don't think we can win without him, we're probably going to get burned. But if we, can have an honest discussion with ourselves about, I want to accept this and I want to give him a chance because I do believe that we can still make an impact on this kid's life, then I think we have to give them that opportunity to do that. But when your kids, when they take ownership, of these values and they take pride in what they're doing, that's when you really start to build momentum in your program. And what are the pitfalls that relate to culture and values? And they relate to me to the t-shirts and the slogans and the signs that we have in our gym. And I think there's an incredible value, and both Kevin and Carly in their presentation did such a fantastic job of explaining how you can build those things and give them meaning, so that they're followed up by actions. But if you don't follow those up with actions, then they're not worth the paper they're printed on. And pretending to be something that you're not is, in my opinion, worse than just admitting that we really don't have a very good culture. But you know what? We like basketball, and we're gonna play. And I'm here for myself. I think that team would have a better chance than somebody who has an illusion is trying to delude themselves into thinking there's something they're not. And they're going to have a difficult time moving forward. So we're about 6 years into the program right now, and I want to call attention to the fact that I've actually have an assistant coach at this point, and I kind of cringe when people talk about my gym and my program and what I did. And in the early years for me, sometimes it's tough because I literally was by myself, and some of the decisions were my decisions. But at this point, I was so fortunate to have Pat O'Leary jump on board, and a guy that I immediately bonded with and shared the same ideas about kids and what it meant to build a program. And we went on a run where we found ourselves in 3 consecutive OFSA finals, and this 7 consecutive OFSA appearances. And after the first couple where we were just happy to be there, winning some games and highlighted with this run of 3 consecutive finals. And was it bittersweet? For sure it was, but to be fair to the kids and to our program, the first 2 years, we faced a juggernaut in Nicholson Catholic College with Coach Barbeau, and an incredible coach with an incredibly talented team. And we were overmatched for sure the first year. The second year, not so much, but clearly we were in tough. And just another moment to just to highlight the camaraderie between high school coaches. And that after that second loss, going through the handshake line, Coach Barbeau, and he said, I'm not going to lie, Pat, like I'm extremely happy for us and our kids, but I honestly feel like incredibly, bad for you. And it was genuine. And it just shows, the respect there is between coaches and programs, because we all know what it takes and we all know what goes into it. And it was just another one of those moments where that respect between colleagues, came forward. So we definitely knew we had things moving in the right direction. And now it was a matter of how do we sustain, what we've done, so it's really easy to identify problems. So I think the quote relates to that, but finding the solutions is more difficult. So, how do you go about finding solutions? And again, I think back, Jamie did such a great job with his presentation. I watched him like, geez, I should steal a lot of this stuff. But, he talked about adaptability, and I refer, it's the same concept. It's versatility. So as a high school coach, how do you demonstrate versatility? Well, one of the things is you're going to have to wear many hats. Outside of the basketball, you're going to be a tutor, you're going to be a social worker, you're going to be a psychologist, you're going to be the strength coach. You're going to be involved in fundraising. And if you're not prepared to do those things, then your program is probably going to stagnate. So, all of our coaches and our junior coaches committed ourselves to that. And from a basketball perspective, it even requires more versatility. We were losing a tremendous amount of talent and players. And we were, if we were in a position to rest on the things that we had done, it just wasn't going to work for us. So as a high school coach, you're really you're sort of stuck with the kids that walk in your building, and in terms of what their skill level is, and who they are as people, the size. So if you're not willing to adapt and you're stuck to your ways and not willing to grow, like you've got to grow along with your kids. So we did a lot of that. We played zone, we played man, we just had to find solutions. That's our job. And a big pitfall that I've seen, and I fight it myself, is dumping on the kids in those situations. I hear, I've come across coaches, and I have a conversation with them and talking about, my kids don't work hard, or my kids won't listen to me, or they don't understand the offense. And I'm not going to be critical and say anything, but I would say it to people within our program. If they said it, I would say, well, that's where you come in, and that's our responsibility. And if we place failure at the feet of our players, then we're doing them a disservice and ourselves a disservice. So that versatility is a big component in sustaining that drive to be to put yourself in a position of success. So you can't be stubborn and you can't be afraid of looking at alternatives. And that's I think why people are tuning into these presentations, to build their knowledge and their experience, to continue to be versatile. And I use this picture just as a, an example of that. You get in a timeout in a crucial situation, and it requires a lot of preparation and experience. And along with versatility, you develop that sense of trust, because your kids start to understand that, coach, he's got the answers most of the time, and he's come through for us. And I think, if you've got a strong relationship, they're also willing to accept that, sometimes coach makes some mistakes. So it's these critical moments that, you better be prepared, and have answers. So, in this case, other than Cole, who's incredibly thirsty, the kids are tuned in, and it's a big moment, and I'm hoping that I was prepared with some answers. Life begins at the end of your comfort zone, and for us, that relates to our emphasis and a priority that we placed on traveling. And I can honestly say that our program would not have got to the level that it did if we did not place such an emphasis on traveling. And that comes from just considering locally, like just getting out of our area. In the Niagara region, we've got some great programs. It can be competitive, but in Ontario, and not to offend some of the other major centers, for us, if we wanted to test ourselves, we had to go to Toronto, and we had to get face to face with the very best, regardless of size. And I was very fortunate to have developed a bit of a relationship with Jeff Zauner, who's going to present, and I can't wait for that. When he presents, he always hosted a tip-off tournament. And in that tournament was, the cream of the crop, the Eastern Commerce's, Mother Teresa, the Oakwoods, and then there was us, and, a smaller school. And at the beginning of the year, probably a few kids banged up from football, but, we knew how important that was for us to go and, again, find out who we were, and how were we going to deal with adversity. It was an incredibly important part of what we did. And it was something we could keep referring to. Maybe we felt a little bit too good about ourselves at some point, or just needed to be reminded sometimes that, we've been here before, we've played better teams than this, we should feel confident, we're prepared. And to take it even one step further, we committed ourselves, and I've always, I love to travel as it is, and I love to travel with our teams. And, we came across a company, KSA Events, and Kelly and Todd, who are now, good friends of mine right now, and probably happy that I'm giving them this little shameless plug right now. But, these were incredibly important events in our teams, and even our teams that, won a provincial championship and medaled. They always look back, and these are the things that they remember most about the program. And it's the work to get there. And it ties back to sacrifice, and how much are you willing to do, because it's way easier not to do it, and people who, make excuses, just, we can't make it, it's just too hard for our team. To me, it just ties back to, what are you willing to, give up, and what are you willing to sacrifice, and how important is this to you, because these experiences were incredibly valuable for us, as a program. And this is a picture of, our group, and this was our provincial championship team that traveled to the Bahamas, and they're playing on a floor where the NCAA tournament just finished. And, we beat a team from Colorado, and we beat a team from Kentucky, and we beat a team from the Bahamas, and, won the championship. And, just the experiences, and, the idea of, these kids seeing, 24/7, go back to the relationships, what kind of bonds and what do you learn about these kids, when you're hanging out with them 24/7, was just incredibly valuable. And I can't recommend this, to people who are trying to figure out how they can take their program to the next level, but it does come with a tremendous, a cost. This is one of my favorite quotes, and losers focus on winners, and winners focus on winning. And that, I didn't come across that till much later, and I struggled with that. But one of the keys that I felt, for sustaining a program was focus, and not losing focus. And our kids, more recently, are probably sick and tired of me and the other coaches reminding them, of where we came from. And they have no idea what it took to get there, and who, laid the path for them, and that they're incredibly, lucky and fortunate, because we don't want, any sort of entitlement or comfort. So, we want to be humble, and we've got to be prepared and focused, because people are gunning for you. And every successful program in a particular area knows just how competitive people are, and they don't want the same people on the top all the time. And if you better be focused and prepared. So, we're constantly reminding them of where they came from and what'll happen if we lose that focus. And through that focus, they develop that mental toughness, and to be prepared for everything that comes their way. And, you got to continue to remind them and fight that battle of them feeling too comfortable and too good about themselves. And, for coaches, sometimes, we have to be focused on what we're doing, because with success comes a lot of negativity sometimes from the outside, and people questioning things that are going on in your program. Are they playing too many games, and where are they getting the money for these, to travel? And I'll be honest, in the beginning, I was a little sensitive to the criticism. I wanted to defend what we were doing, because I believed in what we were doing and doing it the right way. But ultimately, I said, we just need to focus on what we're doing. And, as some advice to other coaches to do the same, just focus on your program and not what other people are doing with theirs. And, where do you lose, what's the pitfall with regards to focus or mental toughness? One of the things I see is, coaches who talk about mental toughness and wanting that, and then, getting in a game and just completely losing their own focus and attacking officials and making excuses for things that are happening. Not that, I'm not one to be critical of officials, but for me, I've clearly expressed to my team, and our coaches would do the same, that, that is a role that we have, but, we would never, make an excuse about, and especially in front of our players about, that there was any other reason that we weren't successful other than something that we didn't do. So, it's something you really have to watch as a coach, is that, it's about focusing on the things that you can control and not making excuses when things don't go your way. This is one of those fantastic moments in our program that I think, relates to mental toughness and focus. This is the people in the Niagara region are, a little bit outside, but understand the significance of the standard tournament. And this was the 50th anniversary, and it was held at Brock. And, as you can see from the crowd, it was, incredibly attended. And, we found ourselves in this game. We were down 6 with 17 seconds, and they were shooting a foul shot. And I remember looking over to Pat O'Leary and saying, like, I can't believe we're going to go down like this. And I couldn't believe it, because our best player, Pat Pilato, who, went on to play at UBC and finished his career at Brock, really, and it was very rare, had struggled. And, I knew that there was no guarantee that we were going to win. Governor Simcoe was a great team, and Tom Grantis was a great coach, and it was, a great battle. But, the moment I said it, I think what shook me back into it was that someone on our team was, just had that look that, they'd given up, and I kind of barked at him and said, hey, just stay focused and let's do it. And Mitch, who's shooting this shot right now, he came down, and traditional 3-point play, we're down 3. I think we foul again with 7 seconds. We come down, and this was, a shot to tie the game, to force it into overtime. And one of the things I really like about this, Jamie Salfi here is one of my good buddies, and it just shows you how much the people that care about you care about the things you're doing. And, he's hanging on, that shot and wanting it to go in as badly as I do. And it's a really special thing for me to see. But, Mitch ends up making this shot as the buzzer sounds, and the place goes nuts. And, we end up winning the game in overtime. And just because of the toughness of our kids and their, willingness to keep fighting until it was over. And a funny story is, after Mitch hits this shot, and I really, I was, in a little bit of shock, and the wave of emotion between, thinking that we had lost and now that we had an opportunity. And he just walked by me, and as only Mitch did, say, "Hey, coach, don't worry." He says, "I got you." It's just a great moment for us. And one of those experiences that I know coaches throughout, high school coaches that has, if they haven't had the experience, the opportunity to experience that, they will. And it's just an incredible moment. The last thing for us, and I love the quote, for us, the tradition is not the worship of ashes, but the preservation of fire, because to us, it is a fire. If you look at that analogy, if we stop stoking the fire and we get away from the things that helped us build it, that it's going to go out, and we're going to have to start all over again. And winning is incredibly important for you as a coach, because it gives you and your staff, it does give you currency with your players, and it kind of speeds up some processes, because they understand now that there's a tradition here, and somebody knows what they're talking about here, and kids who are coming into the school understand the tradition. So you build that tradition, and winning doesn't necessarily mean you win all the time, and we certainly did not win all the time, but we a lot of times we just put ourselves in a position to win. And if you do that often enough, you will win. And when you develop a sense of pride in your program, and you have players coming back to coach, and you have players coming back for big games and wanting to be a part of your program, you know that you are, you're at a point where your phone rings and interrupts your train of thought. But when you get that sense of pride in a program, there's nothing better, because now it's the kids themselves who are buying into what you're doing. So what are the pitfalls that come along with winning? Is just simply to become arrogant or to become entitled and cool. And again, some of the things that kids in our program are sick and tired of me talking about is that I hate cool. Like, I can't stand cool, and cool has no place with anybody in our program. And I kind of rage against social media sometimes, and that cool. And I always say, like, cool for us is winning. Like, cool is success, and cool sometimes is cleaning up your bench after a tournament game, win or loss. So we redefine what cool is, and hope that our kids buy into that as well. So in terms of the elements that build a program, that kind of sums it up for me. And I want to give credit to the current coach and my brother-in-law, John, who put together the PowerPoint, making me seem a lot more tech savvy than I really am. But he asked me, are these independent, or are they interdependent, and are they pillars, and are they sequential, and can you do it without, and after I looked all those words up in the dictionary, I said, yes and no, Jono, because building a program does not look like this, and it's messy, and it's difficult, and all of these things are obviously interrelated, and they're crucial, and it won't be perfect. But if you just focus on these elements or similar elements, you have a real opportunity to be successful. So Tanner, I've got a few things with regards to the prep programs, but I don't know if we want to take a break now. If you have any questions, or if someone has any questions, or I could just sort of finish off and see where we are as far as time.
Sure. There is a question actually that I think will tie nicely into where we go with the prep program. So if you want to show that, then I'll come back with a couple of the questions that we have. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So, just to finish off, and, here's, after those 3 consecutive losses in the finals, and then some other close calls, a couple of bronze medals along the way, and 215 was my actually last year as the head coach of the team. We finally broke through, but, and that was, obviously a great moment for our program. But again, what was most special for me is included in that picture is my brother, who was coaching with me, and my high school coach who's in the center, Mike McGinnis, who I can't tell you how much I owe him in terms of, instilling a love of basketball and instilling a confidence in me. And Nick Flynn is a Dennis Morris player who I'd coached against, who was, doing some student teaching at our school. And just for, when we won, it was, one of those, it was a program win, and the kids were calling me, and, to a fault, I tell them, hey, this is for you guys. And I thought back to those kids and Jason, that first day in the gym, and in those battles. And, just to reach that was an incredibly, important step for us, and something that I won't forget. But, the last thing, like, how do we continue to develop high school basketball? And we're all well aware of, the emergence of prep programs, and make no mistake, I believe that there is definitely a place for prep basketball, and it is the pathway for a lot of kids. And if it keeps our kids in Canada, then I'm incredibly supportive. And I know how many great programs there are, and how many great coaches there are. At the same time, I see an incredible relevance still in the high school, and how many fantastic programs. And it hurts me sometimes that they're not getting the recognition that they deserve, and how do we combat that? And I think the first thing we do is make sure we're educating our kids about the differences and the pros and cons and the values of each, because there are certainly kids, and of that picture, we lost 2 of those kids who were in grade 11 at the time to prep programs, and I was in support of them going, because of what those schools could provide them that we might not be able to provide in terms of strength and conditioning, and just daily competition against superior athletes. But for other kids, I do come across kids who would probably be better served staying in their high schools. And another thing we can do is just make sure we have relationships and reach out to prep school coaches, and have the courage to have the conversations about what their real intentions are, and why they see it as valuable, a pathway for a kid, and I'm fortunate that I've got Terry in our area at Ridley, and other coaches throughout who I know, who I'm not afraid to pick up the phone when they ask about players, and have a real conversation, because it goes both ways. As a high school coach, you can't hang on to kids who because they're going to help you win, and they're going to keep your program going, when that there's probably a better avenue for them. John O, my brother-in-law, again, I've given him the gears more than a few times. He likes to, put things on Instagram, and he's created some of these photo packages for the kids. And John, I don't know if that's us. It's a little much. But then, the more I think about it, and what he's doing is just, he's selling. I shouldn't use the term selling, but he's promoting what we're doing, and the kids love it. And it's he's trying to battle, the fact that we're not getting the recognition that maybe we deserve. And I think it's important for us and other programs to keep doing it, and promoting our game, and just how strong our game is, and how pure it can be, in terms of the fact that the sacrifices that our coaches are making, and the quality of our programs. And I think OFSA has to continue to keep promoting their championships. And we went to Windsor this year, and it's just an incredible event, and one of the best that I've seen. And they talk about how maybe the level has dropped, but it certainly hasn't been evident to me in the last 2 or 3 trips that our program has been there. And hopefully our administration and schools can step up and understand the importance of getting some consistency in coaching. That's a big change from when I started. When I was playing, there was guys that were the Pat Woodburns and Larry Millers and Ralph Neros that were at programs for 15, 20 years. We don't have that anymore, and we need to fight to get that back. There's so many other opportunities for coaches. But I just certainly want to see high school basketball continue to be relevant, in light of, prep schools are not going away, and club basketball's going away, but everybody needs to recognize the talent level with the coaches and the quality of programs that possess. And that's what I hope is going to happen. And I'll fight to make sure that happens, because I'm always going to be a high school coach at heart.
That's great. Thanks for that answer, Coach. Next one coming to you. It says, hey, Coach, players nowadays have their own individual goals and definitions on what success means to them. how do you get your players to see beyond themselves and see the bigger picture? And then how can we as coaches help our players have a fire to pursue team success rather than individual success?
Oh boy, that is a great question. Again, it starts with a relationship. It starts with just letting them before they when the kids join your program, making it clear what the expectations are and how we go about business. And we're balancing, for all of the kids in the program, we're balancing those individual goals and trying to help them get to a certain place individually. Like one of our things that we need to do as a program is to help kids who want to play at the next level. So sometimes that is us making a sacrifice and allowing them to do some things that may not be in the best interest of us winning games, but we balance that. But at the same time, they have to recognize that they have to make sacrifices, and that we will work together to do this. And I know Mike Rayo, a longtime high school coach and a combatant of ours and a good friend, and he had that slogan at Brock, the best version of me is we. And that that one of the things that we'll tell our kids, for you to get the type of accolades or exposure or recognition, it comes along with team success. That there's nothing brings coaches into a building than teams that are doing well and reaching the finals of tournaments, and trying to talk to them in that respect. But it's a challenge, and if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. And if I had all the answers, I'd feel a lot more comfortable of where I was as a coach. So that's about the best answer I could do, and I hope I did it justice.
That's great, Coach. As we wrap up here, is there a way that coaches can get in contact with you if they want to learn more about your program or dig a little deeper?
Yeah, just a couple of shots here. There's that Darren Gym I was talking about in comparison to today. There's my email, and I love talking basketball, and certainly if somebody wants to reach out to me about something that was said here or anything related to basketball or travel opportunities, anything that I discussed, then there's my email, Tanner, and feel free to use it.
Sure. That's great, Coach. Really appreciate the time and the effort that you put together, in telling us your story and your belief and how you've affected the game in such a positive way. So we thank you for that. We thank you for taking the time to share that with us today. We'll leave you with the final word before we sign off.
Yeah, just a couple of things is, to make sure, and anyone who's out there listening right now, maybe with the exception of my mom, whose coaching days are probably done, to continue to grow as a coach, and learn. And I'm in a bit of a transition now, and I'm fortunate to be, back at my university, with Coach Willie and Brandon, and I'm learning from guys. I'm 20, 25 years older than, and you got to continue to do that and be a lifelong learner. And just the final thought, and ironically it comes from a high school student, and I hope that people have seen this, and if they haven't, look up a tube. It'll be, if you Google 16 seconds valedictorian speech, and it finally someone encapsulated what I felt when we won the OFSA championship in a little bit of a different way. But he talked about how he found out he had a chance to be valedictorian, and he worked his tail off to get it. And when he did win it, in his speech, he talked about how he was extremely happy and overjoyed, but it only lasted 15 seconds. And then in the 16th second, he recognized all of the things that he sacrificed. And, and for him, it was about he'd given up on some relationships and put them in the back burner. And he realized that the mistake he made, how happy he was that he recognized it there. And I had a similar feeling when we won OFSA. That joy lasted, it was fleeting. And I was like, wow, that's all there is. And it's a little disappointing. So I recognized that it wasn't that was important to me. And it was those relationships. And, I had a different realization, and it came to me. So just serve your kids, be true to yourself. And, I wish everybody the best of luck with their programs. And again, Tanner, and Chris and Basketball Immersion and Golden Ticket, thank you so much for this opportunity. And I hope that, I've been able to provide some insight to coaches this evening. So